Stop living off everyone else and get your own life together, Miriam, I yelled, my voice echoing off the sleek, modern walls of my condo. You think you can talk to me like that? Miriam spat back, her face flushed with anger. You're the one who's been mooching off Dad's success. I'll show you what it's like to be truly desperate. I glared at her, my hands trembling with fury. The condo, with its floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the bustling city below, felt more like a battlefield. My parents sat silently on the couch, their faces etched with worry and fatigue. Dad, once the picture of confidence, looked defeated. Mom clutched his hand, her eyes darting between us. Jared, Miriam's husband, lounged casually in one of the armchairs, scrolling through his phone as if none of this concerned him. His nonchalance only fueled my anger. Dad's success? I scoffed. You're talking about the man who lost everything because of a bad investment. Don't you see how much they're struggling? Miriam's eyes narrowed. And whose fault is that? Dad trusted you to help him with the finances, and look where we are now. I took a deep breath, trying to control the rising tide of frustration. I wasn't the one who got mixed up with a corrupt partner. I'm the one trying to fix things, taking them in and supporting them. Support? Miriam sneered. You're just showing off. Look at this place, Evelyn. You think a fancy condo makes you better than the rest of us? I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. This isn't about showing off, Miriam. It's about responsibility. Why don't you and Jared ever lift a finger to help? Jared, finally looking up from his phone, smirked. We have our ways of handling things. Maybe if you weren't so busy playing the martyr, you'd understand that. I shot him a withering look. Handling things? Is that what you call it? Leeching off others and acting like the world owes you something? Miriam stepped closer, her eyes blazing. You better watch your mouth, Evelyn. You don't know what Jared and I have been through. Actually, I said, my voice steady, I think I know enough. While you were out living your lavish lifestyle, I've been here picking up the pieces. Mom stood up, placing herself between us. Girls, please, this isn't helping anyone. We need to come together, not tear each other apart. Miriam rolled her eyes. Coming together? How about starting with Evelyn doing her fair share instead of acting like she's the only one who matters? I stepped back, my heart racing. This has to stop. We can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's clearly not. Why can't you see that, Miriam? Before Miriam could reply, Dad spoke up, his voice weak but resolute. That's enough. We're a family, and right now we need to find a way forward together. I looked at him, my anger softening. He'd always been the rock of our family, even now when he was at his lowest. Fine, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But things need to change. We need boundaries, and everyone has to contribute. No more freeloading. Miriam scoffed but didn't argue. Jared went back to his phone, uninterested in the resolution. Dad squeezed Mom's hand and she nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. As the tension in the room eased slightly, I realized this was just the beginning. The embers of conflict had been fanned into flames, and there was no telling how the fire would burn or who would be consumed by it. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over the kitchen. Mom busied herself at the stove while Dad sat at the counter, a somber look shadowing his face. I poured myself a cup of coffee, feeling the weight of last night's argument still hanging in the air. We need to talk, Mom said softly, setting a plate of scrambled eggs in front of Dad. About the situation we're in. Dad sighed heavily. Evelyn, your mother and I, there's no easy way to say this. The investment I made, it was manipulated by a corrupt partner. We've lost everything. I swallowed hard, the gravity of their words sinking in. I know, Dad. That's why I took you in. We'll get through this together. Mom's eyes welled up with tears. We had to sell what little we had left to pay off some of the debts. This is all we have now. Dad nodded, his expression weary. We're grateful for your help, Evelyn. But the burden is too much for you alone. We'll manage, I assured them, my mind racing with a million thoughts. Somehow, we'll find a way. Just as the conversation started, the doorbell rang. The last person I expected to see stepped through the door, Miriam, with her usual air of entitlement, her bags trailing behind her. Didn't think I would come, did you? Miriam smirked, dropping her bags unceremoniously in the hallway. Well, I'm here now, and I need a place to stay. I exchanged a glance with Mom, who looked both exasperated and resigned. Miriam, we're in no position to offer you anything more. She explained gently. Miriam waved her off. Oh, please, Evelyn has this big fancy condo. Surely there's room for one more. Jared had some issues at work. We need somewhere safe while it blows over. I clenched my fists. Issues, Miriam? Is that what you're calling it? Miriam's eyes flashed with irritation. Yes, issues. Now, if you could find it in your heart to be a little less judgmental, you'd understand we're family. We help each other. Dad's face hardened. A little less judgmental? Miriam, you ignored our struggles and lived in luxury while we sank. Now you come here demanding help? And you're a saint, right, Dad? Miriam shot back, her voice dripping with sarcasm. All this because of your brilliant investment. Now, unless you want a bigger scandal, you'll let us stay. Mom put a hand on Dad's arm, her voice pleading. David, this won't solve anything, but maybe with us all together we can figure it out. Fine, I said sharply, ending the debate. Miriam, you can stay, but you will follow the rules of this house, contribute where you can, and no more demands. Miriam smiled sweetly, but I could see the resentment brewing in her eyes. Of course, dear sister, we'll make it work, somehow. The room's tension thickened as Miriam and Jared settled in, bringing with them an air of manipulation and deceit. I knew this peace was fragile, ready to shatter with the slightest provocation. The real battle was yet to come, and we were all stepping onto the front lines. The sound of laughter echoed through the condo, grating on my nerves. Miriam and Jared had been here for just a week, and already their presence was suffocating. My once peaceful home now felt like a ticking time bomb. Is there something I can help with, Miriam? I asked, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice as I saw her lounging on the couch. She looked up from her magazine, a smug smile on her face. Oh, Evelyn, you're such a sweetheart. But no, Jared and I are fine. Maybe you could make us some coffee, though. I forced a smile. Sure. As I moved to the kitchen, Jared sauntered in, his eyes scanning the room like he owned the place. Nice setup you have here, Evelyn. Almost makes me forget why we're here. I bit back a retort. Coffee's brewing. It'll be ready soon. Jared leaned against the counter, his tone casual. You know, Miriam mentioned you're doing pretty well in the tech world. Any tips for someone looking to make a quick buck? I glanced at him, sensing the underlying greed in his question. Hard work and integrity. Not exactly quick, but it works, he chuckled. Integrity. Right. I'll keep that in mind. Miriam appeared in the doorway, her smile saccharine. Jared, sweetheart, why don't you give Evelyn a break? She's been so good to us. He smirked, pushing himself off the counter. Sure thing, babe. As he walked away, I turned to Miriam. We need to talk about expenses. Groceries have nearly doubled since you two arrived, and I can't cover everything. She rolled her eyes. Oh, Evelyn, always so practical. Don't worry. I'll pitch in when I can. Besides, Jared's working on something big. We'll be out of here in no time. That's what I'm worried about, I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. Days turned into weeks, and the strain grew more apparent. Miriam's demands increased, her contributions non-existent. One evening, as I went over the bills, I found myself short on funds. I confronted her in the living room. Miriam, I need you to start pulling your weight. This isn't sustainable. She looked up from her tablet, irritation flickering across her face. Evelyn, believe me, no one wants to be here more than I do, but you're making this more difficult than it needs to be. My patience snapped. Difficult? You're using up resources and giving nothing in return. Miriam stood, her eyes blazing. You think I want to be here, sponging off you? I have my own problems, Evelyn. Jared's lost his job, and we're trying to figure things out. Cut me some slack. Cut you some slack, I yelled, frustration boiling over. I've been more than patient, but this isn't working, and you know it. Miriam's face twisted with anger. You just think you're so much better, don't you? Always the martyr, always the responsible one. Get off your high horse, Evelyn. You might be the golden child now, but don't think that makes you invincible. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I'm just trying to keep this family together. Well, you're failing, she snapped, storming out of the room. My head swam, the weight of her accusations pressing down on me. The battle lines were clearly drawn, and there was no turning back. Tensions were at an all-time high, and it was only a matter of time before everything exploded. The drama was far from over, and I braced myself for the fallout. A loud knock shattered the tense silence of the morning. I opened the door to a stern-faced man clutching a file. "Is Jared Thompson here?" "Yes, why?" I replied, feeling a sense of dread. The man flashed a badge. "I'm Detective Mills. I need to speak with Mr. Thompson about an ongoing investigation." My stomach dropped. "Jared, it's for you," I called, my voice shaking slightly. Jared sauntered over, his confidence quickly fading as he saw the detective. "What's this about?" "You're under arrest for embezzlement and fraud," Detective Mills stated, pulling out handcuffs. Miriam rushed into the room, her face a mask of shock. "What? No, there must be some mistake." Jared tried to protest, but the detective was firm. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As the door closed behind them, Miriam crumpled onto the floor, tears streaming down her face. "This can't be happening. It can't be real." I knelt beside her, feeling a pang of pity despite everything. "Miriam, what did Jared do?" She shook her head. "I don't know, Evelyn. He said he had it all under control. I never asked questions." I took a deep breath. "You need to start facing reality. Whatever Jared did, it's serious. We need to figure out a plan." Miriam looked up, her eyes filled with desperation. "But what can we do? We're broke, and now he's in jail. What am I supposed to do?" "You need to cooperate with the authorities," I said firmly. "Figure out what you know and tell them. This is beyond us now." Days turned into a blur of legal paperwork and tearful phone calls. My parents tried to offer support, but the strain was evident. Every time I saw Miriam, a mix of fear and anger flashed in her eyes. One evening, after another exhausting day, I overheard Mom and Dad talking quietly in the living room. "I can't believe Jared was capable of this," Dad said, rubbing his temples. "We trusted him." Mom sighed. "I feel like we failed as parents. How did things get so wrong?" "We can't blame ourselves for their choices," Dad replied, "but we have to deal with the consequences now." Back in my room, my mind raced. I started piecing together everything I knew about Jared's work, his shady dealings, and the funds that never quite made sense. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Miriam had to have known something. The next morning, I confronted her. "Miriam, you need to come clean. Did you know what Jared was up to?" She looked affronted. "How dare you accuse me? I've done nothing wrong." "Really? Because it's hard to believe you were completely in the dark," I countered. "Believe what you want," she spat. "You always think the worst of me." "I think what the evidence shows," I replied. "And right now, it's pointing in your direction, too." Miriam's face twisted into a scowl. "You're just trying to push me out." "Well, guess what, Evelyn? Good luck dealing with this mess alone, because I'm not going anywhere." As she stormed off, I knew she was in denial. But her defiance only strengthened my resolve. I would find out the truth, no matter what. The stakes were higher than ever, and the cost of failure was something I couldn't afford. Another evening in the condo, and the air was thick with tension. Miriam was sitting at the dining table, picking at the leftovers from dinner. Dad had wanted us all to eat together, but Miriam's palpable resentment towards me turned every meal into a battlefield. "You know what your problem is, Evelyn," Miriam sneered, breaking the silence. "You think you're better than everyone else because you've got this place and that little tech startup." I looked up from my laptop, barely containing my frustration. "Miriam, I'm just trying to make sure we all survive this mess. Do you really think I wanted it to come to this?" She scoffed. "Survive? You've always been about one-upping everyone. Even in school, you had to be the top student, the perfect child." "That's not true," I said, my voice low. "I just worked hard, something you might consider trying." Miriam's face turned red with anger. "Don't you dare preach to me. You have no idea what I've been through." "Then explain it to me," I challenged, closing my laptop and facing her fully. "What have you been through that excuses all this?" She stood up, shaking with rage. "You think I wanted Jared to get arrested? You think I wanted to lose everything? We were supposed to be partners? He promised me a life of luxury, and now it's all gone." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Miriam, it's not about what was promised. It's about facing reality. Jared made terrible choices, and now we all have to deal with them." "Don't you get it, Evelyn?" she yelled. "It's not just about Jared. It's about you always being the hero, always getting things right, while I messed up, and now you're going to abandon me when I need you the most." "Abandon you?" I echoed, incredulous. "You moved into my home. I've been trying to help, but you refuse to accept any responsibility." Miriam's eyes filled with tears, but her expression remained defiant. "You think this is help? You're just rubbing your success in my face." "I'm not," I said quietly, "but if you keep pushing everyone away, you'll end up with nothing." She glared at me, then stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I sank back into my chair, exhausted by the constant conflict. That night, I lay awake thinking about the path ahead. Miriam's accusations stung, but they also fueled my determination. The more she tried to drag me down, the more I realized I had to rise above it all. The next morning, I woke up early and dove into my work with renewed vigor. Every email, every call, every decision I made in my startup was a step towards reclaiming control. The chaos around me only made my resolve stronger. Later, I found Miriam in the living room, a resigned look on her face. "Evelyn," she said, her voice almost a whisper, "I'm sorry for what I said, but I need you to understand. I'm scared. I'm losing everything, and I don't know how to handle it." I nodded, softening. "I get it, Miriam. We're all scared, but we need to support each other, not tear each other apart." She sighed heavily, looking defeated. "I'll try, Evelyn, but I need you to try too." "Deal," I said, offering a tentative smile. The truce was fragile, but it was a start. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in weeks I felt a glimmer of hope. I was determined to rise above the ashes, no matter what it took. The phone buzzed incessantly on the table. I grabbed it, seeing the name of my startup's lead investor flashing on the screen. "Hello, Mr. Carter," I answered, trying to sound confident. "Evelyn, I have great news," he said, his excitement palpable. "We've just secured a major deal. Your startup's growth prospects are incredible. This could be a game changer." I felt a surge of relief wash over me. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. I can't wait to see the details." "Keep up the good work, Evelyn. You're on the right track," he said before hanging up. I sat back, absorbing the magnitude of what just happened. This deal could transform my life and provide the financial stability I so desperately needed. As I walked into the living room, Miriam was scrolling through her phone, looking more despondent than ever. For a moment, I considered sharing the good news with her, but then I remembered her history of turning any positive news into a source of resentment. I decided to keep the information to myself for the time being. Miriam glanced up and noticed my expression. "Why do you look so smug?" "Just had a good call with work," I replied, keeping it vague. She snorted. "Oh, rubbing your success in my face again, are we?" "That's not what I'm doing," I shot back. "I'm just focusing on something positive for once. You could try it too." She rolled her eyes. "Focusing on what, Evelyn? My husband's in jail, and I have no job. Where's the silver lining in that?" I clenched my teeth, biting back a sharp comment. Instead, I tried a different approach. "Maybe you could take this time to figure out what you really want to do with your life. Find something you're passionate about." Miriam scoffed. "Not everyone can be like you, Evelyn. Some of us don't have it all figured out." "I don't have it all figured out either," I said quietly. "But I'm trying. That's all anyone can do." She fell silent, staring at her phone as if it held the answers to all her problems. I decided to leave her to her thoughts and went to my room to review the details of the new deal. Days turned into a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and planning. The startup surged in growth, and with every success, I felt a step closer to financial independence. One evening, as I returned from another successful meeting, I found Miriam waiting for me in the living room. She looked desperate, her facade of strength crumbling. "Evelyn, I need your help," she said, her voice shaky. "I can't make rent, and Jared's trial is depleting what little we have left." I took a deep breath. This was the moment I had dreaded, but also anticipated. She needed me now more than ever, and it was time to confront her hypocrisy. "Miriam, I've supported you as much as I can," I said firmly. "But you need to understand that your lifestyle and choices have consequences." Tears welled up in her eyes. I know. I've made mistakes, but I need you now. Please, Evelyn." I felt a pang of guilt, but pushed it aside. "You have lied, manipulated, and taken advantage of everyone around you, especially our parents and me," I said, my voice cold. "Jared's actions hurt all of us. You showed no remorse until it affected you directly." Her face crumpled. "I don't know what to do." "Figure it out," I replied, arms crossed. "We supported you, hoping you would change, but you never did. Now you need to stand on your own 2 feet. Miriam stared at me, stunned. So you're abandoning me too? I'm not abandoning you. I'm making a stand, I said, resolute. The privilege of family support comes with responsibility, which you've ignored for too long. As I walked away, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. The drama had reached its peak, and the consequences were now unavoidable. The tables had turned, and this time I was in control. The news broke like a storm. Jared had been sentenced to a maximum term for his crimes. The media swarmed, the headlines splashed across every platform. Miriam's world crumbled as the public disgrace settled over her like a shroud. I watched the coverage from my office, feeling a grim sense of justice. Miriam's facade of superiority had finally shattered. She couldn't hide behind Jared anymore. The real repercussions of their actions were finally hitting home. Later that evening, I found Mom and Dad sitting in the living room, the TV muted, their faces drawn with worry. I took a deep breath before speaking. Dad, Mom, we need to talk about the future. We can't keep living in this constant turmoil. Dad nodded, his shoulders slumped. You're right, Evelyn. We need a fresh start, a place where we can rebuild without the dark cloud of Jared and Miriam hanging over us. Mom wiped a tear from her eye. But where do we go, Evelyn? What do we do? I have an idea, I said, my voice steady. I've had some success with my startup, and I think it's time we moved somewhere peaceful. A new place where we can focus on our lives and leave all this behind. They both looked at me with a mixture of hope and fear. I felt a surge of determination. My success wasn't just for me, it was for them too. They deserved a better life, free from the toxicity that had plagued us. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I worked tirelessly, finalizing our new home and ensuring everything was in place. When moving day arrived, it felt like a weight was lifting off my chest. This was our chance to start anew. As we settled into our new home, I could see the change in my parents. Dad seemed more relaxed, Mom more at ease. We were finally free from the chaos that Miriam and Jared had brought into our lives. One day, as we sat in our new favorite cafe, my mother reached across the table and took my hand. Evelyn, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, I replied, smiling. We're in this together, always. But my thoughts lingered on Miriam. She was now completely alone. Her actions and decisions had finally caught up with her. She had lost everything, her husband, her friends, her dignity. A few days later, I received a call from an unknown number. Hesitantly, I answered. Evelyn, it's me, Miriam, a broken voice said on the other end. Miriam, I replied cautiously. I don't know what to do, she confessed, her voice shaking. I've lost everything. Can you help me? I took a deep breath, bracing myself. Miriam, I tried to help you. We all did, but you refused to change. I know, she whispered. I know, and I'm sorry. Please, I have nowhere else to go. Closing my eyes, I struggled with the decision. Miriam, you need to understand that actions have consequences. I can't keep bailing you out. Please, Evelyn, she pleaded. I'll do anything. Just help me this one last time. After a long pause, I finally said, I'll think about it, Miriam, but you need to show that you've truly changed. The silence on the other end was deafening before she finally replied, I will. Thank you, Evelyn. As I hung up, I felt a mix of emotions, relief, hope, and a lingering sense of caution. Perhaps this was the beginning of Miriam's redemption, or maybe it was just another cycle of her manipulations. Only time would tell. For now, I focused on the new life I was building with my parents. The tranquility of our new home filled me with a sense of peace I'd almost forgotten. The struggles of the past were behind us, and the future was ours to shape. Our new home was a sanctuary, a cozy house with a garden where Mom could indulge her love for flowers and plants, and a study where Dad spent hours reading without the shadows of the past looming over him. Life was finally settling into a peaceful rhythm. One sunny afternoon, as Mom and I were sipping coffee on the porch, the doorbell rang. I'll get it, I said, standing up. I opened the door to find Miriam standing there, looking worn and fragile. Evelyn, can we talk? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I nodded, stepping aside to let her in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where many family discussions had taken place. This time, though, the stakes felt different. Miriam, I began, last time we spoke, you said you wanted to change. Have you thought about what that means? She looked down at her hands, picking at her nails. I've been trying to figure it out. It's not easy, Evelyn. I don't know where to start. Start by being honest, I replied. Not just with us, but with yourself. Tears welled up in her eyes. I've made so many mistakes, hurt so many people. I don't know if I can come back from this. You can, I said gently, but it requires real effort. No more shortcuts, no more manipulations. Mom joined us, placing a comforting hand on Miriam's shoulder. We want to help, but you need to meet us halfway. Miriam looked up, her face wet with tears. I will, I promise. Dad entered the room, sensing the gravity of the conversation. Miriam, we all want to see you succeed. What's your plan? She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. I've been looking for jobs. I'm willing to take anything to start rebuilding. That's a good start, Dad said, nodding. But you need more than just a job. You need to rebuild trust. Miriam looked each of us in the eye, her voice stronger now. I know, and I will. I'll prove it to you all, one step at a time. The days that followed were filled with cautious hope. Miriam stayed with us, contributing to the household and actively looking for work. Slowly, she began to rebuild her life. The transformation was gradual but visible. One evening, Mom suggested we go to the cafe that had become our favorite spot. As we sat there, enjoying the peaceful ambiance, Miriam suddenly spoke up. Evelyn, thank you. I know I've said it before, but I mean it. Thank you for not giving up on me. I smiled, feeling a genuine warmth. Family doesn't give up on family, Miriam. We're in this together. The cafe owner, recognizing us as frequent customers, brought over complimentary desserts. On the house, he said with a smile. You ladies seem to brighten up the place. We laughed and enjoyed the sweet gesture, savoring not just the desserts but the sense of normalcy and peace that had returned to our lives. The past was still a part of us, but it no longer defined us. As we walked back home, the setting sun casting a golden glow over the neighborhood, I felt a sense of completion. Our journey had been fraught with challenges, but we had emerged stronger, more united. We've come a long way, Dad said, breaking the comfortable silence. And it's because of you, Evelyn. Your strength kept us together. I shook my head. We all had our part to play. It was never just me. And now, Mom added, we can finally look forward to the future with hope. Miriam nodded, her eyes reflecting a new sense of determination. Absolutely, the best is yet to come. As we stepped into our home, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Life would continue to throw challenges our way, but we were ready to face them together. For the first time in a long while, I felt at peace, content with the simplicity of just being with my family. And that was more than enough.
What does it feel like to be a ghost in your home, drifting through rooms where laughter echoes, but never for you? I spent my childhood chasing a shadow, believing that if I could just catch it, my father would see me, not as a flicker in the corner of his eye, but as a daughter worthy of his pride. My name is Aurora, and at 32, I've learned the weight of being invisible is heavier than silence itself. In our suburban house, 5 miles from the hum of downtown, I grew up cloaked in neglect, my heart a fragile mosaic of hope and hurt, pieced together by a father's indifference and a family's unspoken hierarchy. I was 9 when I first felt the sting of being unseen. Our living room, with its faded blue couch and coffee table scarred by years of careless coasters, was a stage for my brother's triumphs. Jake, the eldest, could spin a story that made teachers forget his late homework, his grin a key to every locked door. Ryan, the youngest, wore his soccer medals like a knight's armor, each one gleaming under the dining room chandelier. I was the quiet one, the girl who filled notebooks with stories and sketches, my dreams tucked away in a bedroom wallpapered with peeling daisies. When I brought home straight A's in middle school, my report card crisp with promise. My father, Richard, barely glanced up from his newspaper. Good, he muttered, his eyes sliding back to the sports section. But when Jake passed a math class, he'd been failing. Richard's hand clapped his shoulder, his voice booming. That's my boy. The words were a spotlight, and I stood outside its glow. The disparity carved itself into my bones. At 12, I spent a humid June afternoon crafting a Father's Day card, my fingers sticky with glue and glitter. I poured my heart into a poem, each line a plea for his affection. The dining room table, set with my mother's chipped china, was alive with the clink of forks and Ryan's chatter about his latest goal. I slid the card toward Richard, my pulse a frantic drumbeat. He opened it, his eyes skimming the words for a fleeting second. "Thanks," he said, his voice flat as the linoleum floor, before turning back to the baseball game flickering on the TV. 5 minutes later, Ryan handed him a store-bought mug emblazoned with Dad, purchased with a crumpled $10 bill. Richard's face split into a grin, his laughter filling the room like a summer storm. "Now that's a gift," he said, holding the mug aloft. I stood frozen, the card still warm in my hands, its glitter dull against the ache in my chest. My brothers were the sun and moon in our family's sky. Jake, with his easy charm, could talk his way out of detention and into anyone's good graces. His laughter a melody Richard hummed along to. Ryan's soccer trophies lined the mantel, each one a testament to his speed and strength, celebrated with backyard barbecues that drew neighbors from blocks away. I was the shadow, my sketches and stories dismissed as childish whims. Once, at 14, I asked for a new sketchbook, my old one bursting with ink and dreams. Richard's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp as a winter wind. "What's the point you'll give up halfway?" Like always, the words sliced deeper than I could name. A wound that bled quietly through my teenage years. My mother tried to bridge the gap, her hugs a fleeting warmth in a house chilled by Richard's favoritism. In the kitchen, where the scent of her baking lingered, she'd pull me close, her apron dusted with flour. "You're special. Aurora," she'd whisper, her voice a soft rebellion against the hierarchy. But even she couldn't shift the balance. If Ryan wanted the last slice of pizza, it was his. If Jake needed $20 for a school trip, Richard handed it over without a question. My needs were afterthoughts, my presence a footnote in the family's story. By 16, the sadness in me hardened into something sharper anger, a spark I didn't yet know how to wield. I sat in my room, the walls closing in, and made a vow not to my father, but to myself. It would matter, not because he saw me, but because I saw myself. The 5 miles between our house and the city felt like a chasm, but I began to dream of crossing it, of building a life where my light could shine. The glitter of that Father's Day card was long gone, but its lesson endured. I would never be enough for him, so I would be enough for me. The holidays in our house were a masquerade, each laugh and clink of glasses a mask for the truth I carried like a stone. At 17, I stood in the glow of our Thanksgiving table, the air thick with the scent of roasted turkey and my brother's effortless charm. Knowing I was the ghost no one noticed. My name is Aurora, and as I edged toward adulthood, I learned to weave my pain into a quiet rebellion, stitching together a future where my father's indifference couldn't touch me. In the 5-bedroom house we called home, 10 miles from the city's pulse, I began to build something new, not for Richard's approval, but for the girl who refused to fade. Thanksgiving was a performance. The dining room draped in autumn hues, paper leaves taped to the walls by my mother's careful hands. Jake spun tales of his latest prank, his voice a magnet for Richard's laughter, while Ryan recounted a soccer goal that had the local paper calling him a prodigy. I cleared plates, my presence as unremarkable as the faded tablecloth. When I mentioned my acceptance into the honors program, a letter tucked proudly in my pocket, Richard's nod was a flicker, gone before it warmed me. "Honors?" "Huh?" he said, his fork scraping his plate. "Nice." Jake's napkin-scrawled business idea, pitched over pumpkin pie, earned a booming, "You've got a leader's brain." Son, I swallowed the sting. My silence a shield, school became my sanctuary, a place where my efforts bore fruit. I studied late, my desk lamp casting pools of light over textbooks in our quiet suburban street, part-time waitressing, 15 hours a week at a diner 2 miles away, paid for extra courses. Each certificate, a brick in the wall I built around my heart. My scholarship to a state university, earned through sleepless nights, was a triumph I celebrated alone. At home, Richard's eyes glazed over when I mentioned my internship at a local firm, his attention snapping back to Ryan's upcoming game. Soccer is where the real pressure is. He'd say, as if my work was a hobby, not a lifeline. I loved my brothers. Their light a warmth I couldn't resent. Jake's wink could disarm a room. His charm a currency I envied but never hated. Ryan, sprinting across fields 10 miles from home, carried a confidence that made me proud, even as it eclipsed me. But Richard's favoritism was a blade, cutting deeper each time he overlooked me. One evening, I stood at the edge of a stadium, watching Ryan score under floodlights. The crowd's roar, a reminder of my place in the shadows. I wanted Richard to ask about my dreams, to see the fire in me, but his silence taught me to stop waiting. By 20, I was laying the foundation for something greater. In a downtown cafe, 2 miles from campus, I pitched my idea for a digital platform to a local investor, my voice steady despite the tremble in my hands. The platform, designed to connect small businesses with local markets, was more than a business. It was my soul, forged in the crucible of neglect. I worked late, my laptop screen a beacon in my cramped dorm room, coding and dreaming of a future where my worth was undeniable. Richard never asked about it. His conversations at dinner revolving around Jake's startup dreams or Ryan's training camp. Tell me about that investor meeting. Jake. He'd say, my internship updates met with a grunt. The pain of being unseen didn't vanish, but it changed. It became a fuel, burning away the need for Richard's pride. I stopped imagining his voice saying, I'm proud of you, Aurora. Instead, I whispered it to myself. Each small victory a step toward freedom. The 10 miles between our house and the city were no longer a barrier, but a promise of a life where I could stand tall. My achievements a canvas painted for me alone. My mother's quiet hugs, offered in the kitchen's warmth, were a reminder that someone saw me. But I knew the hierarchy was unyielding. As I poured my heart into my platform, I wasn't just building a business. I was building a version of myself Richard couldn't ignore. A woman who would one day cast a shadow too vast to dismiss. As I stepped into the world I'd carved from ambition and grit, I believed, for a fleeting moment, that my triumphs might finally pierce the veil of my family's indifference. The truth, sharp as a winter dawn, would prove otherwise. In a sleek conference room 5 miles from my modest apartment, I unveiled my digital platform to a crowd of strangers. Their applause a warmth I'd never known at home. But the echo of my father's dismissal, carried across the 15 miles to our family's dining room, would soon remind me why I'd learned to thrive in silence. The launch event was a mosaic of nerves and hope. The downtown venue, a glass-walled beacon against the city's skyline. Polished wood floors gleamed under recessed lights, and the air hummed with the murmur of investors and local press. Their notepads poised like promises. I stood at the podium, my navy blazer a shield against the tremor in my knees, and spoke of my vision. A platform connecting small businesses to local markets, streamlining commerce with a click. Each word was a brick laid in the foundation of my worth, built over years of late-night coding and diner shifts. The room fell silent, eyes fixed on me, and when I finished, the applause crashed like a wave, washing away the ghost of my invisibility. A grizzled investor, his tie loosened, clasped my hand. This could change the game, he said, his words a spark in the kindling of my confidence. For the first time, I felt seen, not as a shadow, but as a force. The glow lingered as I drove 15 miles to our family's annual reunion. The invitation, a rare tether to a home I'd outgrown. The dining room, with its oak table and mismatched chairs, was a stage for my brother's familiar bravado. Jake, lounging with a glass of bourbon, spun tales of his latest venture. His voice a siren's call for Richard's approval. Ryan, fresh from a marathon, boasted of a sponsorship deal, his grin as bright as the chandelier above. I sat at the table's edge, my launch's success a quiet flame in my chest. As dessert plates were cleared, I cleared my throat, the words poised like a diver on a board. I launched my platform last week. I began, my voice steady. It's gaining traction. And investors are Richard's hand waved. A dismissive flick, cutting me off. Good for you. Dear, he said, his tone as thin as the paper napkins. Jake, tell us about that deal you closed. The room pivoted, my brother's voices swallowing mine, their laughter a curtain dropping on my moment. The dismissal was a blade, familiar yet freshly honed. Richard's eyes, fixed on Jake's animated gestures, held a pride I'd never touched. Ryan's chuckle, as he recounted a teammate's prank, was a melody I couldn't join. My mother, refilling coffee cups, shot me a glance, her lips a tight line of unspoken apology. I sat, hands folded, the flame in my chest guttering but not extinguished. The 15-mile drive back to my apartment was a silent reckoning. Each mile marker was a reminder no achievement, no matter how grand, would shift the hierarchy etched into our family's bones. In that moment, a fierce clarity ignited, not of anger, but of resolve. I would build a life so radiant that their shadows could no longer dim me. A life forged in the quiet where I'd always thrived. In the quiet of a new city, 100 miles from the echoes of my family's neglect, I found a rhythm that was mine alone, a pulse of creation, of defiance, of becoming my platform. Once a dream sketched in a redacted dorm room, was now a living thing, its roots spreading through the digital soil of a market hungry for connection. In a modest apartment with creaking floorboards and a view of a neon-lit skyline, I became the architect of my destiny, each keystroke a declaration that I was enough. The move was a severance, a deliberate cut from the tether of my past, packing my life into cardboard boxes. I left behind the suburban street where my childhood dreams had withered. The 100-mile journey to this new city, with its sprawl of glass towers and restless energy, was a pilgrimage to myself. My apartment, a third-floor walk-up with a leaky faucet, became a sanctuary. The walls, bare at first, soon bore the weight of my ambition. Whiteboards scrawled with algorithms, Post-its mapping user flows. I lived on instant noodles and determination. My bank account a tightrope I walked with care. Freelance gigs, coding for startups and coffee shops 10 miles from my door, kept the lights on, but my platform was my true north. Growth came slowly, then all at once. A $50, $1,000 investment from a venture capitalist, one after a sleepless week refining my pitch, was rocket fuel. My user base doubled, then tripled. As small businesses flocked to my platform like birds to a new spring, I hired a team, a scrappy quartet of coders and dreamers who, like me, knew the sting of being underestimated. Our office, leased for $2, $7 a month, had floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the city's pulse. Each sunrise a reminder of what I'd built. Team meetings, held over pizza boxes and energy drinks, crackled with ideas. Our laughter a defiance of the doubts we'd all carried. A client, a bakery owner with flour-dusted hands, told me, "You listened when no one else did." Her words were a currency richer than dollars. My transformation was quieter, but no less profound. I bought a used car for $30. Zard. Its engine humming with the promise of freedom. I walked taller, my voice no longer a whisper but a steady current. In my office, staring at the skyline, I saw not just a city, but a reflection of the woman I'd become unafraid, unyielding. My family, 100 miles away, knew nothing of this. I skipped their holiday gatherings, my absence unremarked, my silence a choice. Social media posts of Jake's conferences or Ryan's medals flickered across my screen, but I closed the app, my focus a laser on my path. The girl who'd once begged for a sketchbook had grown into a woman who needed no one's permission to shine. For years, I'd carried the weight of my family's disregard, each slight a pebble in a growing avalanche. Now, 100 miles from the city where I'd forged my empire, I returned to the house that had never been my home, not to beg for love, but to claim a truth they could not deny. In the driveway, my luxury car gleamed like a blade under the June sun, its purr a prelude to the reckoning I'd planned. The black envelope in my purse, heavy with the ink of my triumph, was no gift, it was a mirror, and I was ready to make them face it. The decision to attend the Father's Day dinner came like a spark in the quiet of my office, its windows framing a city I'd conquered. 2 years had passed since I'd crossed the threshold of my family's home, my absence a silent rebellion they'd barely noticed. I typed a curt, "I'll be there," into the family group chat, the emojis that followed thumbs up, a winking face clueless to the weight of my intent. The night before, I stood in a dealership 20 miles from my apartment, signing papers for a $70, $1,000 black sedan. its leather seats a throne for the woman I'd become, under a new legal name, one I'd chosen to sever the last threads of my past. I claimed it. The envelope, its paper crisp and costly, held a document that would rewrite the family's story. Its words, a quiet detonation. I drove the 100 miles to the house. The car's engine a steady hum beneath my resolve. The suburban street, with its manicured lawns and mailboxes, was unchanged. A time capsule of my invisibility. My siblings' cars lined the driveway, their laughter spilling from the patio 10 feet away. Richard sat at the head of an outdoor table, a beer in hand, his grin a king's indulgence. Jake, gesturing with a wine glass, recounted a property deal. Ryan, in a team jersey, bragged about a coaching offer. I stepped from the car, my tailored coat a quiet armor, and their eyes flicked to me surprise, then judgment, settling like dust. Richard's smirk broke the silence. "Well, look who crawled out of hiding," he said, laughter rippling through the table. I smiled. Thin as a blade. Happy Father's Day. Dad. The dinner was a familiar charade. The patio strung with fairy lights, plates piled with grilled steak and corn. Jake's stories of condo purchases and Ryan's tales of athletic camps dominated. Richard nodding like a conductor of their symphony. My mother, arranging napkins, avoided my gaze. Her silence a surrender to the hierarchy. I sat at the table's edge, the envelope a heartbeat in my purse, the car's keys cool against my palm. As dessert arrived, Richard leaned back, his voice oily with pride. "Takes guts to lead," he said, toasting Jake and Ryan. Then, his eyes slid to me, sharp with mockery. "And then there's our dreamer, still playing at failure." The table erupted, Jake's chuckle a bark, Ryan's fist thumping the wood. I didn't flinch, my pulse steady as a drum. I stood, slow and deliberate, the air thickening with their sudden attention. "I brought you something, Dad," I said, my voice a calm current. I slipped the envelope from my purse and walked outside, leaving the patio door ajar. The car's engine roared as I maneuvered it into the driveway, its sleek form a shadow against the house. Returning, I placed the envelope before Richard, its weight a challenge. "For you," I said. Gasps flickered. Jake squinted. Ryan leaned forward. "Is that yours?" Jake asked, voice sharp, Richard's fingers unsteady, tore the flap, pulling out the paper. His eyes scanned, then froze, color draining from his face. "What is this?" he snapped, glaring at me. I met his gaze, unyielding. "Anderson Tech. Your company for a decade. I bought it last week. I'm your boss's boss now." The silence was a chasm, their faces pale masks of disbelief. Jake's glass trembled, Ryan's jaw hung slack, Richard's hands shook, the paper crumpling in his grip. I stepped back, my voice soft but iron. "Not the dreamer you thought." I turned, walked to the car, and slid into the driver's seat as the engine growled to life. Richard's shout raw, fearful, chased me from the open door. I didn't look back. The 100 miles to my city a path to my horizon. As I drove away from the house that had caged my childhood, the night air cooled through the car's open window. I felt not vengeance, but release a weight lifted, leaving only the clarity of my own strength. 10 miles from the suburban sprawl, I paused at a gas station. Its fluorescent lights a stark contrast to the chaos I'd left behind. The envelope's truth, a $2 million acquisition of my father's world, was no longer mine to carry. I'd handed them the mirror, and in its reflection, I was free. The road stretched dark and quiet, each mile a thread unraveling the past. Back at the house, I could imagine the scene unfolding, vivid as a film I'd scripted. Richard, still at the patio table, clutched the document, his knuckles white, eyes darting over words that stripped his empire bare. Jake, pacing, his voice rising, demanded, "How did she do this, Ryan?" Fists clenched, stammered, "It's gotta be a fake." The paper, detailing the transfer of Anderson Tech, the house, and assets worth millions, was no forgery. Richard's voice, hoarse with defeat, cut through their protests. "She owns it all. He said, the words a confession. Everything I built, it's hers. My mother, silent in the kitchen, would hear the tremor in his tone, knowing the hierarchy had crumbled. Their panic was a storm I'd sparked but no longer needed to witness. Jake's anger, once a spark of charm, would flare into accusations. His dreams of condos now dust. Ryan, stripped of his golden mantle, would grapple with a reality where his trophies meant nothing. Richard, the pillar they'd leaned on, was a man undone. His pride a shattered glass. She's smarter than I ever knew, he'd mutter. The admission a wound he couldn't staunch. The family group chat, buzzing with frantic messages, lit up my phone as I drove, but I let it hum unanswered, a relic of a life I'd outgrown. 20 miles into the city, I pulled over. The skylines glow a canvas of my making. In the quiet, I saw not the girl who'd begged for a sketchbook, but the woman who'd built an empire in silence. My platform, now serving thousands, was a testament to my resilience. Its profits a currency of self-worth. The car, the office, the team, they were mine, earned without applause. I didn't need Richard's pride, Jake's charm, or Ryan's glory. I had found a deeper validation, one forged in the crucible of my own will. As I drove on, the city's pulse welcomed me home. In my apartment, I caught my reflection in a window, the skyline framing a woman who'd clawed her way to freedom. The door to my past was closed, not with anger, but with peace. The house, 100 miles away, would never be the same. Its power shifted by a truth they couldn't unsee. My brothers, once kings, would wrestle with their diminished shadows. Richard, his empire hers, would face the cost of his neglect, but I was done looking back. The road ahead was mine, and in its quiet, I was whole. The invitation lay on my desk, its embossed gold script glinting under the soft halo of my lamp, whispering promises of a night I couldn't escape. Evelyn and Marcus cordially invite you. My sister's wedding, a spectacle, a coronation, a stage where I'd always been relegated to the wings. I traced the edges of the card, feeling the weight of 11 years spent building something no one in my family believed in. They saw me as Morgan Mitchell, the dreamer who traded a law degree for a startup's gamble, destined to crawl back defeated. But here I was, in a sleek Boston office, atop an empire they didn't even know I'd forged, Everlink Dynamics. My creation was worth $3 billion, and I was its invisible architect. As I sat there, the city's skyline shimmering beyond my window, I wondered, would this wedding finally force them to see me? Or would it be another scene in their play of dismissal 11 years ago? I was 24, a law school dropout with a wild idea and a laptop that overheated every hour. Over brunch at a sunlit cafe in Cambridge, Evelyn, my younger sister by 2 years, had laughed, her fork poised over avocado toast. Morgan's lost her mind. She'd told our parents, her voice dripping with pity, she'll be broke by Christmas. Begging for a cubicle, my mother nodded, sipping her mimosa, while my father muttered about wasted potential. I'd left that table, their words burning in my chest, and rented a desk in a co-working space that smelled of burnt coffee, while Evelyn climbed the PR ranks at Lang Tech, dazzling everyone with her corporate headshots and Prada bags. I was coding in a hoodie, pitching to investors who smirked at my youth, and praying my servers wouldn't crash during demos. Everlink Dynamics grew from those sleepless nights, neural interface chips that revolutionized robotics, prototypes that won contracts, beta testers who became evangelists. My family never noticed. They were too busy framing Evelyn's Employee of the Month plaques. I kept my success veiled, operating through shell firms and blind trusts. To the world, I was a mid-level operations manager at a vague tech consultancy, a role I played to avoid their scrutiny. Only my inner circle, my godfather Jackson Rowe, who lent his name as Everlink's figurehead, and a handful of trusted lieutenants knew the truth. I preferred it that way. Anonymity let me build without their judgment, their expectations, their inevitable demands. But the wedding loomed, a collision of my worlds. My mother's voicemails piled up, each one gushing about Evelyn's engagement to Marcus Lang. heir to Lang Group, Boston's fading robotics giant. It's the social event of the year. Morgan, she'd said, her tone implying I'd better not ruin it. I considered declining, but her calls grew insistent, each one a reminder of the family I couldn't quite escape. Miss Mitchell Clara, my assistant, leaned into my office, her voice snapping me back to the present. The quarterly strategy reviews in 10. I nodded, sliding the invitation into a drawer. Clara hesitated, then added, also, Lang Tech sent the final purchase order for the neural interface chips. They need them by mid-next quarter. It's a $65 million deal. I smiled faintly. The irony sharp enough to cut. Lang Tech, Marcus's family empire, was banking on those chips to save their sinking ship. But they didn't know the chips were mine. Everlink's proprietary tech. And I held the pen that could sign or shred their future. Thank you. Clara, I said, my voice steady. I'll handle it. As she left, I leaned back, the Boston skyline a glittering reminder of what I'd built. The wedding was this Saturday, a stage set for their arrogance and my reckoning. I'd go, not to play their game, but to rewrite the rules. The morning of Evelyn's wedding dawned crisp. The Boston sky a flawless blue that promised perfection. I stepped out of my Tesla. The Lang estate sprawling before me in Beacon Hill's historic heart. Its manicured lawns and marble columns screaming old money meets new tech. My midnight blue gown hugged my frame. Custom made. Its label discreet, but its craftsmanship unmistakable. I'd chosen it deliberately, understated elegance. A quiet rebellion against the flash I knew awaited inside. The air buzzed with anticipation. Guests in tailored suits and sequined dresses streaming toward the venue. I smoothed my dress, steeling myself for the role I'd been assigned, the overlooked sister, the family's cautionary tale. The ceremony was a spectacle of excess, as if Evelyn and Marcus had raided a vault of legacy wealth and tech millions. Over 500 guests filled the estate's glass terrace, their chatter mingling with a string quartet flown in from Italy. Gold-plated cutlery gleamed on tables draped in silk, and floral arrangements towered like sculptures, requiring scaffolding to stay upright. I stood at the edge, watching my mother air-kiss her way through the crowd, her curls immaculate. Morgan, she called, spotting me. Her smile tight as she leaned in for a perfunctory cheek graze. You came, and you look decent. Her eyes flicked over my gown, searching for a flaw. Behind her, my father was deep in conversation with a Lang Tech board member, no doubt angling for a favor. I forced a smile, the weight of their indifference settling like frost. Where should I sit, I asked, glancing at the ornate seating chart. Its calligraphy a map of status. My mother waved a hand. Vague. Oh, we had to rearrange things last minute. Evelyn's guests came in droves. You understand? Her tone was light, but the message cut deep. I understood perfectly. To them, I was still the sister who'd thrown away a legal career to tinker with gadgets. The one who didn't belong at the main table. They didn't know Everlink Dynamics had quietly acquired 3 of Lang Tech's key suppliers, or that the $65 million chip contract they were chasing was mine to give or take. I nodded, letting her words slide off me, and made my way to the ceremony's last row, a ghost among the glittering crowd. Evelyn was radiant, I'll admit, her gown a cascade of ivory lace, and Marcus glowed with the smug assurance of a man born to inherit. The vows were poetic, the applause thunderous, but I watched it all with detachment, my mind on the reception to come. When it began, I scanned the ballroom for my name card, weaving through tables laden with crystal and orchids. Nothing, looking for something. Evelyn's voice cut through the hum, syrupy and sharp. She'd changed into a sleeker dress, her perfection curated for the spotlight. My seat, I said, keeping my tone even. Her smile tightened. A predator's gleam. Oh, didn't they tell you? We had to reserve the main tables for more prominent guests, but the kitchen set something up near the staff lounge. Very cozy. Laughter rippled from nearby tables. A cruel chorus. Marcus sauntered over, his tuxedo pristine, his grin insufferable. Come on, Morgan, don't cause a scene. You've always been good at staying in your lane. His words landed like a slap, echoing the years of their dismissal every holiday where I was cropped from photos, every brunch where my dreams were mocked. I met his gaze. My composure a shield forged in a decade of their underestimation. Noted, I said, my voice cool. But inside, a fire roared. 11 years of being their afterthought burned behind my calm. I slipped my hand into my clutch, fingers brushing my phone. The stage was set. Their arrogance, the perfect prelude to my move. I turned toward the kitchen. Not because I accepted their place for me, but because I knew the real power wasn't at their gilded tables, it was in the empire I'd built, waiting for the moment to strike. The kitchen door loomed ahead, its utilitarian steel a stark contrast to the ballroom's gilded opulence. But I paused, my heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The laughter from Evelyn and Marcus's taunt still echoed, a cruel melody that stirred a decade of buried slights. My fingers closed around my phone, its cool glass grounding me. This wasn't just about a seat. It was about every moment they'd written me off, every sneer that dismissed my ambition. I'd built Everlink Dynamics from a folding table in a Cambridge garage. And now, with one call, I could unravel their world. My pulse steadied. A predator's calm. It was time to stop playing their invisible guest. I dialed, my voice low but firm. Jack, it's me. Terminate the Lang contract. All of it. Effective immediately. On the other end, my godfather's voice crackled with surprise, but didn't question he knew better. As I hung up, a shatter pierced the ballroom's hum. Marcus's champagne flute lay in fragments at his feet, his face a mask of disbelief. Evelyn's smile froze, her eyes darting to me, then to the guests who'd fallen silent. The air thickened, chandeliers casting long shadows that seemed to lean toward me. I held up my phone, the Everlink Dynamics logo glowing on the screen like a verdict. The $65 million neural chip deal. I said, my voice cutting through the hush. The one Lang Tech's been banking on to save this quarter, it's mine, Everlink's. And I just canceled it. Gasps rippled through the crowd, forks clattering against plates. Marcus took a step forward, his jaw tight. What are you doing? He hissed, his bravado fraying. I didn't flinch. My gaze locked on his. What I should have done years ago reminding you who holds the cards. Evelyn's laugh was brittle, a desperate attempt to reclaim control. You're bluffing. Everlink's $1 billion firm. You're just... Her words hung, fragile, and I let them linger, savoring the moment. Am I said, tilting my head. Everlink Dynamics is my company. I'm its CEO, not some operations drone. Those chips. My design. That contract? My decision. The ballroom seemed to contract. Guests leaning forward, phones discreetly recording, Marcus's face drained of color, his hands twitching as if searching for something to grip. That's impossible, he stammered. Jackson Rowe owns Everlink. Everyone knows that. I smiled, sharp and cold. Jackson's my godfather. He fronted the company while I built it from the shadows. Call him if you'd like. He'll confirm it. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth, her curated perfection cracking. The weight of my truth settled over the room, heavy as the floral arrangements wilting under the chandeliers. I wasn't just the sister they'd banished to the kitchen, I was the architect of their downfall. And they'd invited me to their stage. I turned, my gown whispering against the floor, ready to leave them to their unraveling. But Marcus's voice, raw with panic, stopped me. You can't do this. My father's entire launch depends on those chips. I glanced back, my expression serene. I know. And I also know about Lang Tech's leveraged loans, the investor pullback, and the AR rollout that bled millions. Your empire's crumbling? Marcus. And you thought you could mock me while begging for my tech. The silence was deafening, the crowd's eyes darting between us like spectators at a duel. I'd drawn first blood, but the real fight was just beginning, and I was ready to finish it. The ballroom's hush shattered as Mr. Lang strode forward, his polished shoes clicking like a metronome on the marble. His face, usually a mask of corporate composure, was flushed, his bow tie askew. What's this about our contract, he demanded, his voice booming. Marcus, why is your sister-in-law discussing our business? I turned to him, extending my hand with a smile that felt like a blade. Mr. Lang, I'm Morgan Mitchell, CEO of Everlink Dynamics. You might know me better as LM Strategic Holdings, the firm that's been quietly buying up your suppliers. His eyes widened. A man struck by a truth he hadn't seen coming. Your LM Holdings. He sputtered. The one controlling our vendors. Guilty. I replied, my tone light but lethal. Your due diligence team missed a few details. No hard feelings. Evelyn's voice cut in. Venomous. You're lying. This is some pathetic stunt to ruin my day. Her mascara smudged. A stark contrast to her earlier polish. I met her gaze. Unflinching. Ruin your day. I'm just correcting the seating chart. You placed me in the kitchen. Evelyn. But I've been running the table all along. I gestured to the crowd. Their phones now openly recording. Everlink doesn't just supply your chips. We own your debt. Your supply chain. And soon, your company. Marcus lunged forward, grabbing my arm. His grip bruising. Fix this. He growled. Whatever game you're playing, undo it. I looked down at his hand, then back at him. My voice ice. Like when I asked you for a loan to start Everlink. When you laughed and told me to get a real job, that's Marcus. He recoiled, his hand dropping. I pressed on. My words deliberate. Lang Tech's 3 months from insolvency without my chips. And you, Marcus, have been embezzling from your division to cover gambling losses. I know because Everlink audits your books. Evelyn spun toward him, her dress swishing like a storm. You stole from my father. She shrieked, her voice echoing off the crystal chandeliers. Mr. Lang's face darkened to crimson, sweat beading at his brow. Security. He barked, panic rising. Remove her. I raised a hand. My calm unshaken. I wouldn't. Everlink holds a significant portion of your debt. Call it in. And Lang Tech collapses by Monday. Your choice. The security team froze, their eyes flicking between us. The room's power had shifted. No longer at the head table, but in my steady hands. My mother pushed through the crowd, her face flushed with indignation. Morgan, stop this. You're humiliating your sister. I turned to her, my phone still in hand. Humiliating. Like when you cropped me from every holiday photo because I didn't wear Burberry. Or when you said I was throwing my life away, I held up the screen. Want the Q2 earnings report or the acquisition contracts? I have both. Her lips parted, but no words came. The crowd murmured, guests typing Everlink Dynamics into their phones. Piecing together the truth, Marcus's bravado crumbled. His voice a whisper. Morgan, please, not here. We can work something out, a board seat. A partnership? I laughed. The sound sharp enough to cut glass. By next week, I'll own a controlling interest in Lang Tech. Your negligence, your father's mismanagement, it handed me your company. The chip deal was just the handshake. Evelyn sank into a chair, her gown pooling like defeated silk. This can't be real. She whispered, not today. I echoed her earlier cruelty. My voice soft but piercing. The kitchen staff has a lovely table. Evelyn, perfect for your new place in the hierarchy? Mr. Lang fumbled with his tie, his empire unraveling before the guests he'd meant to impress. The wedding, once a display of status, was now a spectacle of collapse. And I stood at its center, the architect of their reckoning, ready to walk away with everything they'd undervalued. The ballroom's chaos faded behind me as I stepped into the cool Boston night, my Tesla waiting like a silent ally at the curb. Mike, my driver and head of security, opened the door, his eyes catching the uproar spilling through the estate's windows. Everything okay, Miss Mitchell? He asked, his voice steady. I glanced back at the silhouettes of Evelyn sobbing, Mr. Lang roaring, and my mother clutching her pearls, all framed by the glow of chandeliers. Everything's perfect. Mike, I said, sliding into the seat. Let's go. We've got a company to finalize. As we pulled away, the Lang estate shrank in the rear view, a monument to hubris crumbling under the weight of truth. I'd dismantled their facade, but the real work building, always building, lay ahead. By morning, the fallout was viral. Lang Tech's stock nosedived. Headlines screaming of debt crises and Marcus's embezzlement. Social media buzzed with clips of the wedding's collapse. My words replayed in grainy videos. I'll own controlling interest in Lang Tech. Evelyn, unwilling to tether herself to a sinking legacy, filed for annulment within days. Her dream wedding reduced to a footnote in Boston's gossip mills. My parents' voicemails flooded my inbox, a crescendo of rage morphing into pleas for forgiveness. I let them pile up, unanswered. My focus on Everlink dynamics. We absorbed Lang Tech's key assets, stripping the excess and cutting the rot. Most employees stayed, grateful for stability. Marcus's department was the first to go. His office cleared out before the week's end. 3 months later, I sat in my corner office. Boston Harbor's waves glinting beyond the glass. Everlink's quarterly reports showed a 24% surge. Our neural chips now powering industries that Lang Tech could only dream of. A buzz from my intercom broke my focus. Ms. Mitchell. There's a visitor. Clara said. No appointment. I sighed, expecting another reporter chasing the Lang story. Send them in. The door opened, and a wave of Chanel perfume drifted through. Familiar yet out of place. My mother stood there, her designer handbag clutched like a shield, her face etched with lines I hadn't noticed before. The receptionist didn't recognize me. She said, her voice small. I had to show ID. I leaned back, meeting her gaze. Security's tight since the acquisition. We've had unexpected guests. She sat uninvited, her posture rigid. Your father and we've been thinking about how we treated you, what we failed to see. Her words trembled, a crack in her polished veneer. I folded my hands, my tone flat. And what did you see? A daughter who didn't fit your mold? Or a favor you need now that the country club's whispering? She flinched, her fingers tightening on her bag. We were wrong, she whispered. We thought success was Evelyn's polish, Marcus's charm. But you built something real. I raised an eyebrow, real enough to eclipse Lang Tech and every subsidiary. But would you have cared when I was sleeping in my car to save on rent? She looked away, her silence an answer. No, she admitted, and that shame is ours. I pressed a button on my desk. Clara, bring the package for Mrs. Mitchell. Moments later, Clara entered, placing a thick envelope before me. I slid it to my mother. What's this? She asked, her fingers hesitant. A chance. I said, Everlink's small business initiative leases mentors, resources. If you want to build something, earn it. No shortcuts. No family strings. She stared at the documents, then at me, her eyes glistening. You'd offer this after everything I stood, gazing at the harbor. I'm not offering forgiveness. I'm offering a path. Merit, not mercy. She rose, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. Thank you, she said, her voice breaking, for the clarity. As she reached the door, I added, that kitchen table at the wedding, it showed me who you all were. The best view is from the edges. She nodded, understanding flickering in her gaze, and left. I turned back to my work. Everlink's next contract's waiting. From my office, Boston's skyline stretches like a canvas of possibility, each light a testament to what grit can build. I keep a battered folding table in the corner, a relic from my garage days when no one believed in me. For years, I was invisible, my family's laughter louder than my victories. They measured worth in logos and lunch invitations, but I measured it in code, in prototypes, in the quiet moments when a dream became real. That kitchen table at Evelyn's wedding wasn't a punishment. It was a revelation, a seat where I saw their truth and claimed my own. I'm sharing this not for pity, but for you, the ones grinding in silence, unseen. Thank you for seeing me. Your story matters. In the comments, tell me about your kitchen table moments when you were underestimated, dismissed, or told you weren't enough. Share the wins you built in the shadows, the dreams you refused to abandon. If you've ever worked twice as hard just to be noticed, hit that like button. Subscribe if you know success doesn't need a spotlight, only substance. Pass this to someone building quietly, someone who needs a spark to keep going. The people who matter will see your value when it counts. And those who don't, they'll be scrambling for a seat at the table you've already set. Don't chase their approval. Chase what lasts impact. integrity. The empire only you can build. That old table in my office reminds me greatness starts where no one's looking. So keep going. Keep creating. Keep proving them wrong by proving yourself right. The kitchen table isn't just where they seat you. It's where you rewrite the rules. As I sit in my office, the Boston Harbor's gentle waves reflecting the dawn's first light, I trace the grain of that old folding table from my garage days. Its scars a map of my journey. The wedding. Evelyn's glittering stage turned crucible taught me a lesson sharper than any boardroom victory. True strength isn't in proving others wrong, but in trusting yourself when no one else does. I'd spent years fueled by my family's dismissal. Their laughter a goad that drove me to build Everlink Dynamics into a $2, $3 billion empire. Each sleepless night, each investor's smirk, each prototype failure was a brick in my fortress. But the wedding revealed a truth I hadn't faced. I'd let their judgment define my worth, my success a weapon to wield against their scorn. When I terminated Langtech's $65 million contract, it wasn't just about reclaiming power, it was about silencing the echo of their doubts. Yet, as I watched Marcus crumble and Evelyn's facade crack, I felt no triumph. Only clarity, their validation. The thing I'd chased in shadows was hollow, offering my mother that envelope, a chance to build on merit. Wasn't generosity, it was my liberation. I didn't need their pride to stand tall. I needed my own. The kitchen table, where they thought they'd diminished me, became my altar of self-belief. It taught me to measure success not in their gasps or their regret, but in the quiet certainty of my path. Every line of code I wrote, every deal I closed, every life Everlink's tech touched, that was my truth, unshaken by their blindness. Now, I build not to prove, but to create, to innovate, to leave a mark that outlasts their fleeting judgments. The lesson isn't revenge or redemption, it's resilience, the kind that blooms in solitude, in the edges, in the places they'll never look. So, I keep that table, not as a trophy, but as a reminder the only approval that matters is the one I give myself, forged in the fire of my conviction. What does it mean to own something truly yours? Carved from years of sweat and sacrifice, only to feel a shadow creeping toward it at 32. I thought I'd answered that question when I signed the papers for my 2-bedroom apartment. A $300 Zazanona dollars dream paid in full with no mortgage to haunt me. My name is Riley Thompson, an accountant who's spent a decade crunching numbers and pinching pennies, building a life brick by disciplined brick. But as I stood in my new home, scraping garish wallpaper under the flicker of a single bulb, a phone call from my mother hinted at a storm I couldn't yet see. Her voice, laced with that too-sweet tone she uses when she's plotting, invited me to a family meeting with a chocolate cake in tow. A surprise, she called it. I should have known surprises in my family rarely end well. For as long as I can remember, I've lived by a simple creed: work hard, save harder, be responsible. It's what adults do. Or so I told myself during the 60-hour weeks at my accounting firm, where spreadsheets blurred into sleepless nights, while my friends posted sun-drenched photos from Miami or flashed new handbags. I packed tuna sandwiches and rented a cramped studio apartment with peeling linoleum. Vacations. I said no to those. 2. Watching my savings account grow dollar by dollar. Every overtime shift, every skipped coffee run, was a step toward something permanent. A home. When my grandmother passed 2 years ago, she left me a modest inheritance. Not life-changing, but enough to bridge the gap. With $300. $. I bought my apartment outright in a neighborhood on the cusp of trendy. 10 minutes from my office. No debt. No strings. Just mine. The place wasn't perfect. The previous owners had a love affair with mustard yellow wallpaper, floral and peeling, and the kitchen's avocado green cabinets screamed 1970s neglect. But I didn't care. This was my canvas. I traded late-night Netflix for YouTube tutorials on drywall and paint rollers. My hands blistered, but my heart full. Each strip of wallpaper I tore down felt like peeling away years of compromise. The living room, with its wide windows catching the morning light, promised a future I'd built myself. I was midway through attacking a particularly stubborn patch when my phone buzzed. Riley. Dear. My mother cooed. Come over next Saturday for a family meeting. Her voice had that artificial lilt, like she was selling me something. What's going on, I asked. Pausing, scraper in hand. Oh, it's a surprise. Just be there by 4. And bring one of those chocolate cakes from that bakery near your place. I pressed her, suspicion prickling. Mom, seriously? What's this about? She dodged, her tone tightening. Just a little gathering. Lily and Kevin will be there. Aunts, uncles, cousins. 2. My eyebrows shot up. The whole extended family for a little gathering. It's a secret. Riley, a surprise. She insisted, then hung up. I stared at my phone. The silence of my apartment pressing in. Whatever my mother was brewing, it could wait. I had walls to conquer. Shrugging, I turned back to the wallpaper. Its tacky blooms no match for my resolve. But as I scraped, a quiet unease settled in my chest. Like the first drop of rain before a downpour. I didn't know then that my hard-won sanctuary was about to become a battleground, or that the family I'd always tried to please would demand I surrender it. For now, I focused on the rhythm of my work. Each tier of paper a testament to the life I'd earned one I thought no one could take away. The scent of fresh paint clung to my clothes as I prepared for the family meeting. My living room now a smooth canvas of primer white, I'd spent the week transforming my apartment. Each brushstroke a quiet victory. But my mother's cryptic call lingered like a smudge I couldn't erase. Growing up, I learned to navigate my family's uneven scales, where my sister Lily, 3 years my junior at 29, always tipped the balance. As I drove to my childhood home that Saturday, a chocolate cake with buttercream frosting riding shotgun, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a script already written, one where I'd never been the star. Lily and I were never equals in our parents' eyes. In high school, she was the cheerleader with a megawatt smile, while I buried myself in the debate club, my arguments sharp but unnoticed. She dropped out of college to find herself, drifting through art classes and boyfriends. Yet our parents never blinked. I clawed through an accounting degree, working nights at a diner to cover tuition. And still, it was Lily that, when we both had dance recitals one weekend, they chose hers, leaving me to perform to a half-empty auditorium. Her high school graduation earned a backyard bash with fairy lights. My college diploma got a rush dinner at Olive Garden. The check split. On my 16th birthday, I unwrapped a used bike. Practical, but plain. Lily's 16th brought a shiny red sedan. Because, as my parents said, she needs help getting to her social events, my debate tournaments. My library volunteering, those didn't count. I never made a scene. I worked harder, saved more, and proved I could stand alone. But the sting of being second best never dulled. Our grandmother's house, a 2-story colonial in a quiet suburb, was the one place where fairness prevailed. When she passed, she left it equally to Lily and me. A gesture that felt like her quiet apology for our parents' bias. We let Mom and Dad live there, rent-free, because it was home, filled with memories of her warm kitchen and our childhood. However lopsided, Lily, now living downtown with her fiancé Kevin in a rented loft, never questioned this arrangement. Neither did I. Until now, as I painted my apartment that week, the rhythm of the roller steadied my nerves. The blisters on my hands were badges of a life I'd built without handouts. Saturday morning, I finished the living room, its walls a soft gray that caught the light just right. I showered, swapped my paint-splattered jeans for a clean blouse, and headed to the bakery. The cake, rich with chocolate and swirls of frosting, was my mother's favorite, a peace offering for whatever she had planned. Driving to the house, I passed familiar streets, the park where Lily's friends partied, the library where I'd studied. The colonial's white siding gleamed as I pulled into the driveway. But the sight of Uncle Steve's truck and Aunt Karen's minivan tightened my stomach. Cousin Derek's motorcycle leaned against the garage. This wasn't a casual lunch. I gripped the cake box, my pulse quickening. What could demand the whole family's presence? Lily's pregnancy. Maybe she and Kevin had been together 4 years. A baby wouldn't surprise me. But why the secrecy? My mother's voice echoed in my mind, her surprise laced with something sharper. I'd always been the reliable one, the one who fixed problems, who sacrificed, As I stepped toward the door, the weight of that role pressed heavier. I didn't know then that they'd ask me to give up everything I'd earned, or that the cake in my hands would soon be a weapon. For now, I took a breath, squared my shoulders, and walked inside, unaware that the home I'd fought for was about to be claimed by those who'd never fought for me. How do you prepare for a betrayal you don't see coming, when the people you've loved your whole life turn your pride into a bargaining chip? As I stepped into my parents' colonial, the chocolate cake box heavy in my hands, the chatter of relatives filled the air like static before a storm. The dining room table gleamed with my mother's good china, reserved for holidays, and the sight sent a prickle down my spine. This wasn't just a gathering, it was a performance, and I was about to learn my role. My mother's quick hug and her swift grab for the cake felt rehearsed, her smile too wide as she ushered me to a seat. I scanned the room, searching for clues, but all I found was Lily's secretive grin and the weight of unspoken expectations. The house hummed with familiar faces, Uncle Steve's booming laugh, Aunt Karen's clinking bracelets, Cousin Derek's slouch against the wall. I slid into a chair next to Derek, whispering, "Any idea what's happening?" He shook his head. As clueless as I was, the meal began with pot roast and mashed potatoes. The cake I'd brought centered like a trophy for later. Small talk danced around the table, but the air felt charged, everyone skirting some hidden truth. My mother finally stood, tapping her glass with a spoon, her eyes glinting with purpose. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice syrupy. "We have wonderful news." She turned to Lily, who blushed under the spotlight. "Our dear Lily is pregnant, and she and Kevin are getting engaged." The room erupted in cheers, forks clattering as relatives clapped. I joined in, my smile genuine despite the old ache of being overshadowed. "Congratulations, Lily," I called across the table. Catching her eye, she nodded, Kevin's arm around her. But my mother wasn't done. Her gaze shifted to me, sharp and calculating, slicing through the joy. "That's not all," she announced, silencing the chatter. "As you know, Riley recently bought an apartment." Nods rippled around the table, half-hearted murmurs of approval I hadn't received when I'd shared the news weeks ago. "Riley's single. No husband. No kids," she continued, her words landing like stones. "Lily, however, is starting a family. She and Kevin need a real home, not a rental." My heart thudded, the room tilting as her meaning dawned. She turned to me, her smile ablaze. "Riley, this is your chance to show how much you love your sister. You should give your apartment to Lily and Kevin." Silence smothered the table. I stared, waiting for a laugh, a sign this was a cruel jest. But her eyes held no humor. "You can rent again," she added, as if my home were a trinket to toss aside. "You don't need all that space alone." My father nodded, his jaw set. Lily looked at her plate, her silence louder than words. Aunt Karen chimed in. "Family comes first, Riley." Others murmured agreement, their voices a chorus of judgment. I stood, my chair scraping the floor, my voice trembling but clear. "You're serious? You want me to give away my apartment? The one I worked for years for? Because Lily's pregnant?" My mother's face hardened. "Your sister needs it more." I laughed, hollow and sharp. I earned every penny of that home. No one helped me. No, Lily's tears came fast, her hand on her stomach. A calculated performance. Kevin glared, his eyes accusing. "How can you be so heartless?" My mother spat, her cheeks flushing. "Why can't Lily save like I did?" I shot back, my voice rising. Whispers swirled, selfish. Difficult, but I held my ground. "I'm not giving it up." End of discussion. Then, in a blur, my mother seized the cake, its frosting gleaming, and hurled it at me. It struck my face, chocolate and cream exploding across my skin, dripping down my blouse. The room froze. I wiped frosting from my eyes, globs falling to the floor. My family's faces not shocked, but satisfied, as if I'd earned this, without a word. I grabbed my purse and keys, cake smearing my hair, and walked out, behind me. Shouts erupted my mother's selfish bastard. My father's "we should disown you." Lily's wail. "How could you do this to me?" I didn't look back, my hands shaking as I reached my car. The taste of betrayal bitterer than the frosting on my lips. The drive home was a haze, my fingers gripping the wheel as chocolate frosting dried in stiff patches on my skin. I stumbled into my apartment, collapsing onto my secondhand couch. The gray walls I'd painted now a mocking contrast to the chaos in my chest. The cake's sticky residue clung to my blouse, a humiliating badge of my family's contempt. I sat in the dim light, replaying the dining room scene, their expectant faces, the cake's impact, their shouts as I fled. My phone buzzed relentlessly, a barrage of texts and voicemails from my mother, father, and Lily, each one a dagger. "You're ridiculous. Just give her the apartment. How selfish can you be? Your pregnant sister needs a home." I silenced the device, tossing it onto the coffee table, my breath uneven. How had it come to this? In the quiet, my mind churned, sifting through the wreckage of the evening. I'd always known my place in the family: reliable, invisible, the one who fixed things. But this wasn't about fixing. It was about surrender. They saw my apartment, my years of sacrifice, as theirs to claim, a resource to plunder for Lily's future. The unfairness burned, not just from tonight, but from a lifetime of slights they'd never acknowledged. I thought of the house we'd sat in hours ago, my grandmother's colonial, its white siding and creaking stairs a repository of memories. She'd left it to Lily and me, equal shares, a legal truth I'd never considered wielding until now. My parents lived there by our grace, not by right. The realization sparked a flicker of power amid the pain. I rose, my legs unsteady, and washed the frosting from my face in the bathroom sink. The cold water stung, but it cleared my thoughts. I needed to understand my options, to protect what I'd built. As I dried my hands, my phone lit up with a Facebook notification. Dread coiled in my gut as I opened the app. My mother had posted, tagging me. It breaks my heart to share this, but sometimes family disappoints. Riley refused to help her pregnant sister Lily when she needed it most, choosing selfishness over love. Pray for her to find compassion. Comments poured in, relatives and strangers piling on horrific cruelty to poor Lily. Some people don't get family. Keeping an apartment to herself, shameful. My mother liked each venomous remark. Orchestrating a public execution of my character, the words seared, each one a fresh wound. Not one mentioned the cake, the ambush, the years I'd toiled while Lily coasted. I scrolled, my chest tightening, until something snapped. Not despair, but clarity. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a campaign to break me. I'd spent my life yielding, swallowing their dismissals. But no more. The colonial house, half mine, was a leverage they hadn't anticipated. I crossed to my filing cabinet, its drawers stuffed with papers from years of meticulous organization. My fingers found the folder labeled Grandma's Will, the document inside confirming my 50% ownership. I held it, the paper cool against my skin, and felt a shift. This wasn't about vengeance, but survival. I set the will on my kitchen counter, its presence a quiet promise. Tomorrow, I'd call a lawyer, someone to untangle my rights and shield what was mine. For now, I needed to move, to anchor myself. I grabbed a paint roller, the living room's half-primed walls calling. The rhythmic sweep of paint soothed my raw nerves, each stroke a defiance of their demands. My phone stayed silent, its notifications blocked. I didn't know what the next days would bring: more insults, more pleas, but I knew I'd face them standing. The apartment around me, its flaws and possibilities, was a testament to my resilience. They'd tried to shame me, to bury me in frosting and scorn, but I was done being their sacrifice. With every brushstroke, I painted not just walls, but a boundary, one they'd never cross again. What does it feel like to wield a truth so sharp it can cut through decades of obligation? As dawn broke over my apartment, the will on my counter gleamed like a blade. Its words, 50% ownership of my grandmother's house, igniting a resolve I'd never dared embrace. The paint fumes from last night's late session lingered, a reminder of the boundaries I was forging. My family's betrayal had stripped away any illusion of loyalty. And now, with their voices still echoing in my silenced phone, I was ready to act. The colonial house? Their unearned sanctuary was my leverage, and I wouldn't hesitate to use it. Today, I'd find a lawyer to carve a path forward, not out of spite, but to protect the life I'd built with my own hands. I searched online, my coffee cooling as I scanned reviews for real estate attorneys. Blackwell Law Office stood out, its website crisp and no nonsense. I dialed, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. I need to speak with a lawyer about property rights. I told the receptionist, who booked me for noon, Jeremy Blackwell, a man in his 50s with eyes like polished steel, listened as I recounted the family meeting, the demand for my apartment, and the will's clear terms. His office smelled of leather and ink, a stark contrast to my paint-splattered world. You and your sister each own half the property, he confirmed. Reviewing the document, you can force a sale, splitting the proceeds. Your parents have no legal claim. I nodded, the weight of his words grounding me. Draft the notice. I said, I want to move forward, back home. I threw myself into renovations, ripping out the living room's worn carpet to reveal hardwood beneath. The physical labor steadied my nerves, each tug of fabric a defiance of my family's expectations. I blocked their numbers, needing silence to think. But 5 days later, my doorbell shattered the calm. Through the peephole, I saw my parents, Lily and Kevin, their faces twisted with fury. I stayed still, pressing record on my phone's voice memo app. Riley, open this door, my mother shouted, her voice shrill. This letter is ridiculous. My father boomed, likely waving Jeremy's notice. You ungrateful wretch. After all we've done, my mother screamed. Lily sobbed. You're making me homeless. Kevin snarled. This is low. Riley. For 15 minutes, their venom poured, threats and insults piling like debris. When they finally left, I saved the recording, my hands trembling not with fear but with clarity. They'd shown their true colors, and I had proof. I emailed the file to Jeremy, who called within the hour. This is harassment, he said, his tone firm. It strengthens your position. Their hostility is undeniable. He proposed a mediation, scheduling it for the following Monday. I spent the weekend sanding the newly uncovered floors, the rhythmic scrape a counterpoint to my racing thoughts. My apartment was transforming smooth walls, gleaming wood a mirror of the strength I was claiming. Monday morning, I dressed in a navy pantsuit, its sharp lines a shield against what awaited. Jeremy's office was a battleground of sorts, but I walked in steady, his confident nod bolstering me. You have every right to do this. He reminded me, don't let them sway you. My family arrived, their lawyer in tow, my mother's glare venomous as she hissed. Traitor. The mediation began, their lawyer arguing that selling the house would upend their lives. Jeremy countered with the recording, its raw hostility filling the room, and screenshots of my mother's public shaming. The evidence silenced their pleas, my family's faces paling as the reality sank in. After 2 hours of tense back and forth, the lawyers returned with a proposal: sell the house, split the proceeds. My mother's eyes welled, but I felt no pity. Do it, I told Jeremy, my voice unwavering. The decision was made, a line drawn in ink as permanent as the one I'd painted in my heart. I left the office lighter, the weight of their demands no longer mine to carry. How do you measure the cost of freedom when it's paid and family ties severed? 2 months after the mediation, the Colonial sold, its white siding vanishing from my life as swiftly as it had anchored my past. The market was fierce, and the house fetched over $350, $700, leaving Lily and me with $175 each after fees. I learned through Jeremy that my parents, furious but powerless, had moved in with Lily and Kevin, their new home bought with Lily's share and a hefty mortgage they'd shoulder into their retirement. I felt no guilt, only a quiet vindication as I sat in my apartment, now a sanctuary of hardwood floors, sleek appliances, and light fixtures that gleamed like my newfound resolve. The renovations were complete, each detail a testament to my refusal to bend. I met with a financial advisor, channeling my $175 sundollars into a portfolio of stocks, bonds, and real estate trusts, a future as solid as the walls around me. One evening, my phone rang. Sarah, my friend from work, her voice gentle, heard about Lily's wedding. She said, small, just family. I wasn't invited, nor did I care. Her baby's due soon. Sarah added, days later. A text from another friend confirmed it. A boy, 7 pounds, 6 ounces. I stared at the message, waiting for regret, but felt only a distant nod, as if reading about a stranger. My nephew would grow up hearing I was the villain, the aunt who denied them my home. They'd never mention their demands, their scorn. On my balcony, I sipped wine, the sunset painting the sky in fiery hues. My apartment, once a fixer-upper, was now a haven. Its every inch earned. A small box on my bookshelf held photos of my grandmother. Her kind eyes a reminder of the fairness she'd tried to instill. I touched it, whispering thanks for her equal gift. A balance my parents never understood. I had no desire to reach out to them. Their silence, a confirmation of their unchanged hearts. They'd never apologize, never see me as more than a means to an end. Sarah's question lingered. Could I live without my nephew? My family, I could. Because family wasn't just blood. It was those who valued me. Like Sarah, like the colleagues who'd checked in after the worst days. My career thrived. My investments grew. And my home stood as proof of what I could build alone. The quiet some might call lonely, I called peace. A stillness earned through battles fought and won. I'd once believed family meant unconditional love, but I'd learned it meant respect, not sacrifice. They'd asked me to burn for their comfort, and I'd refused. As the stars emerged, I raised my glass to the life I'd crafted, one where no one could demand what I'd rightfully claimed. As I stood on my balcony, the city's hum below a soft counterpoint to the stillness within me, I realized the lesson this bitter journey had etched into my soul. Family, I'd once believed, was a bond forged in unconditional love, a refuge where sacrifice was mutual and sacred. But my family's demands, my apartment, my labor, my very worth taught me that love without respect is a chain, not a shelter. I learned to value myself, not as a resource to be spent, but as a person whose dreams and boundaries matter. The colonial sale, my apartment's transformation, each was a step toward a truth I'd long ignored. I am enough. I don't need their approval to thrive, nor must I dim my light to lift others. True family, whether blood or chosen, honors your victories, not your surrenders. With every nail I hammered, every dollar I invested, I built more than a home. I built a life where I choose who shares my table. That lesson, hard won through tears and paint, is my foundation now, unyielding as the hardwood beneath my feet. What do you do when your family hands you a gift that isn't a gift at all, but a quiet, ribbon-wrapped dismissal on my 29th birthday? I stood in our suburban dining room, fingers still tracing the bow on a sleek, black suitcase, as my father's words landed like a stone pack tonight. Be gone by morning. The air felt thin, the chandelier's light too sharp, and my sister's giggle, high and careless, cut deeper than the command itself. I'd bought a chocolate cake that afternoon, a small, hopeful thing with curling plastic letters, thinking we might still be a family that marked days like this. It sat untouched on the table, a silent witness to the moment I began to unravel. The dining room smelled of roasted garlic and my mother's lavender perfume, a strange mix of warmth and artifice. We'd gathered at the oak table, the one I'd helped refinish as a teenager, its scratches now hidden under a cream tablecloth. My parents sat across from me, dressed as if for a church luncheon, Mom in a navy blouse, Dad in a pressed collared shirt. Lily, 23 and radiant, lounged in her chair, her manicured nails tapping her phone. The suitcase sat in the center, its glossy surface catching the light like a warning. I'd thought, foolishly, it might mean a trip, a rare family gesture. Wow, I said, voice catching as I lifted the lid. Are we going somewhere? Their laughter wasn't warm, nor cruel, just hollow, like I was the last to understand a joke told long ago. You are, Dad said, folding his napkin with precision. Mom leaned forward, her smile thin as a paper cut. Pack your things. Sienna, you're leaving tomorrow. I blinked, hands still on the suitcase's handle, the room tilting slightly. Lily's giggle bubbled again, and I saw her smirk, half hidden behind her water glass. The cake, its frosting smudged from the car ride, seemed to mock me from its place between the place settings. I'd stopped at the grocery store after work, picking it out with care, imagining us sharing slices, maybe even laughing. No one had glanced at it. Okay, I said, because what else was there? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. They didn't raise their voices or offer reasons. Mom's eyes flicked to Dad, then back to me, her expression not unkind but settled, as if this had been rehearsed. Dad cleared his throat, the sound he made before delivering news about budgets or car repairs. We've discussed it. He said, it's time for what I wanted to ask. But my throat tightened, and Lily's phone buzzed, pulling her attention. I sat there, the suitcase's weight pressing into my thoughts, and realized they'd stopped seeing me as their daughter long before this moment. I was a tenant whose lease had expired, and a line item was crossed out. That night, I lay in the twin bed I'd slept in since high school, the pale green walls closing in. Downstairs, I heard them laughter, the clink of forks, probably eating my cake. I stared at the ceiling, counting the plaster cracks like a rosary, trying to piece together when I'd become invisible. The suitcase loomed in the corner. Too clean, too new, a stranger in my room. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt the truth settle in. Cold and sharp, this wasn't about space or money. It was about a choice they'd made without me. At sunrise, I packed clothes, a secondhand laptop, and a photo of me at 20, grinning with my first paycheck. They were still asleep when my Uber pulled up. I shut the door softly, leaving no note, knowing they'd only notice I was gone when the next bill came due. 2 years before that suitcase shattered my world. I had a life that felt like mine, fragile but real. I was 27, living in a one-bedroom apartment above a nail salon in a noisy corner of the city, where the air always smelled faintly of acetone and sesame oil from the takeout place next door. The walls were thin, the beige carpet worn to threads, and the hot water flickered like a shy friend. But I loved it. It was mine rented. Yes, but paid for with every cent I earned. I'd sit at my wobbly kitchen table, a thrift store find, and picture a future home nothing grand. Just a place with a small kitchen window where sunlight could spill in. A lock only I held the key to. That dream kept me steady, a quiet pulse beneath my days. I worked as a project coordinator, a job that paid just enough to cover rent, groceries, and the occasional repair for my 2009 Honda Civic, a car held together by duct tape and stubborn hope. I packed lunches, tuna sandwiches, apple slices, reused coffee filters, and bought clothes from consignment shops. Every dollar saved was a brick in that imagined house. I'd scroll through online listings late at night, deleting items from my cart to stay on budget, whispering to myself, someday. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest, and I was proud of it, even if no one else noticed. Sunday dinners at my parents' suburban house were my tether to family, though they always left me hollow. I'd drive the 40 minutes from the city, my Civic rattling over potholes, to sit at that same oak table. Lily, 6 years younger and somehow light years ahead in confidence, would breeze in with something new, a Gucci tote she needed for college, a smartwatch that cost more than my rent. Look, Sienna, she'd say, dangling a bracelet. Mom got me this for acing my midterm. I'd smile, nod, while Mom sighed, her eyes flickering between us like she wished we'd swap places. God, are you still wearing that sweater? Lily once laughed, pointing at my faded cardigan. I shrugged, saying nothing. But the sting lingered. Mom never commented on Lily's spending or my thrift. Sometimes she'd touch my hand, a fleeting gesture, and I'd think, she sees me. Other times, she'd look through me, exhausted by my presence. Dad was worse, buried in his phone or muttering about work, never asking about mine. I kept showing up, bringing side dishes I'd made on a budget, hoping someone would say, Sienna, we're proud of you. That moment never came. Instead, I'd drive back to my apartment, the city lights blurring through my windshield, telling myself it was just a phase, that family meant patience. I wasn't naive, but I believed in steady effort. I'd grown up watching my parents navigate lean years. Always pulling through, I thought my role was to be the reliable one, the one who didn't ask for much. Lily lived on a different planet. Her Instagram filled with beach trips and coffee dates. Her room a shrine to designer labels. I didn't envy her. Not exactly. But I wondered how we diverged so sharply. Once, as I cleared the dinner table, I overheard Mom tell Lily, "Don't worry about the cost. We'll figure it out." I paused, sponge in hand, waiting for a similar softness aimed at me. It never came. Back in my apartment, I'd lie on my secondhand couch, the springs creaking, and stare at the ceiling's water stain, shaped like a lopsided heart. I'd think about that kitchen window, how it would frame a life I'd built alone. I didn't need much a place to breathe, to be seen. My lease renewal came every year, and I signed it with a kind of reverence. Each signature a promise to myself. I was building something. Slowly, quietly, and I thought it was enough. But as I'd learn, no amount of effort could make a family love you if they'd already decided you were expendable. The Sunday pot roast was still in the oven, its savory warmth curling through the house, when my father's voice cut through the haze of clinking silverware. "We need to talk," he said, eyes fixed on his plate, his jaw tight with the weight of something inevitable. My mother folded her napkin into sharp creases, her fingers trembling just enough to betray her calm. I set my fork down. The dining room's familiar wallpaper, faded roses climbing toward the ceiling, suddenly stifling. They told me about the layoffs, how the company had gutted his department, leaving us teetering on the edge of a mortgage we couldn't carry. "Would you consider moving back?" my mother asked, her voice soft but deliberate. "Just for a bit, to help us through." I felt a warning flicker in my chest, a whisper that returning might trap me. But their faces, her red-rimmed eyes, his slumped shoulders, my sister's uncharacteristic stillness pulled me in. I said yes, because family, I thought, meant showing up. I gave notice on my apartment, the one I'd loved despite its quirks, and packed my life into a storage unit off the highway, where my thrift store table and creaky couch gathered dust. The bedroom I returned to, once my sanctuary with its pale green walls, was no longer mine. My sister had turned it into a walk-in closet, her silk dresses draped along the walls like a museum of her whims. They'd cleared just enough space for a twin bed, its frame wedged between shoe racks. That first night, I lay awake, the faint scent of her jasmine perfume clinging to the air, and told myself this was temporary. My father's promise, just until I'm back on my feet, echoed in my mind. A lifeline I clung to as I stared at the ceiling's familiar cracks. I set up a monthly transfer of $1, $800 to my mother's account, watching the numbers drain from my savings like water from a cracked bucket. It went to the mortgage, utilities, my sister's college tuition or so, I assumed. I never asked for receipts, and they never offered thanks. At first, there were small gestures. My mother made chicken pot pie, my favorite, its crust golden and flaky. My father called me his rock, his hand briefly on my shoulder. My sister even asked about my job once, her voice distracted but curious. I held on to those moments, fragile as they were, believing they meant we were still a family. But gratitude erodes fast in a house where roles are set. By the second month, the pot pie stopped appearing. My father's new job, less pay. Longer hours came and went without a conversation about my leaving. Just a little longer, my mother said one evening, her tone more expectation than request. I nodded, swallowing the question I didn't dare ask. How much longer? The house felt like a stage where I played a ghost. My sister's laughter filled the rooms. Her new purchases, a smartwatch, a leather jacket paraded at dinners I no longer felt welcome at. My mother's sighs grew sharper when I left dishes in the sink. As if my presence was a burden, my father barely spoke, his attention lost in bills or the TV's hum. I kept giving, kept transferring, kept hoping they'd see me again. I'd walk past my old bedroom door, now half blocked by a rack of her coats, and feel the space I'd once claimed shrinking. The kitchen, where I'd once pictured my window, was theirs, filled with her snack packs and my mother's herbal teas. I told myself I was helping, that this was what love looked like, quiet, unasked for sacrifice. But as the months blurred, I began to wonder if love was supposed to feel this hollow, this one-sided, this much like disappearing. The shift was so gradual, I barely noticed until it was undeniable. My father's new job stretched into months. Yet the $1, $800 I sent each month vanished without a word of relief. My baths, once a small refuge, were deemed wasteful. My mother's glance at the water bill carried a silent accusation. Dinners, once a ritual of lasagna and shared stories, morphed into whatever my sister craved: quinoa bowls. Sushi takeout, while my contributions went unmentioned. Her new shoes, glossy and impractical, clicked across the hardwood as she flaunted them, while my sneakers, their soles thinning, carried me to work and back. I didn't ask where her money came from, but the question gnawed at me, especially when my shampoo bottle emptied faster than I could afford to replace it. It was a Friday, my body heavy from a week of overtime on a last-minute project. When the fracture came, I trudged into the house, craving only a hot shower and the worn pages of my book. Instead, my sister was waiting at the foot of the stairs, her eyes bright with expectation. "I need $700, she said, as if it were as simple as borrowing a pen. I set my bag down, exhaustion sharpening my voice. For what, she huffed, tossing her hair. "My beach trip is next weekend. 2 hotel rooms, 3 nights. Everyone's paid their share. I just need yours." The absurdity of it, her assumption. Her ease snapped something inside me. "You think I have $700 lying around?" I said, keeping my tone low but firm. "I give $1, $800 every month to this house. I drive a car that's falling apart. My shoes have holes. And you want me to fund your vacation?" Her smile vanished, replaced by a scowl. "Why are you so dramatic?" "It's just money," I laughed, the sound bitter and unfamiliar. "No, it's not. It's weeks of overtime. Skipped meals. Saying no to everything I want so you can live like this." Her eyes welled, but the tears felt rehearsed. "You're calling me lazy," she wailed, her voice carrying down the hall. My parents appeared, summoned by her sobs, my mother's arms wrapping around her as if I'd struck her. "What's going on?" my father demanded, his jaw clenched. I stood my ground, voice shaking but steady. "She asked for $700 for a trip?" I said no. My mother's gaze turned icy. "And you told her to get a job?" I exhaled. I told her the truth. My father's voice was a blade. "That's not your place." I looked at them, their anger a wall, her smug tears peeking through her hands. "This house runs on my paycheck." I said, "I think I've earned a say." My mother's words cut deepest every time we ask for anything. "You throw your money in our faces." That was when I knew they didn't love me. They needed me. Until they didn't. The suitcase came the next day, my birthday, wrapped in a bow that mocked my hope. I packed in silence, left at dawn, and found a hostel where the air smelled of Lysol and burnt toast. For the first time in months, I could breathe. After 2 nights, I texted Carol, my coworker with a sharp tongue and a softer heart. She didn't pry, just offered her couch and strong coffee. At her apartment, I let the tears come quiet, steady, like a faucet finally unstuck. "You don't owe them your life," she said, handing me a blanket. And those words cracked open a truth I'd buried. A week later, I signed a lease on a studio apartment. It's linoleum peeling, but mine. I furnished it with secondhand treasures, a mattress with a faint stain, a desk with wobbly legs, a lamp whose shade tilted like a drunk. Each item was a stitch in a life I was sewing back together. I made tea in a chipped mug, drank it barefoot on the cold tile, and smiled. The taste sharper than any meal in that house. 6 months passed, my savings creeping upward without the monthly drain. I packed lunches again, washed dishes by hand. But now it was my choice, not their demand. The silence of my studio was kind, not heavy, and for the first time, I felt solid, like a shadow stepping into light. The quiet of my studio apartment, with its slanted lamp and chipped mugs, felt like a fortress until the phone rang one gray afternoon. An unknown number piercing the calm. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen, but curiosity won. My mother's voice, syrupy and practiced, spilled through. "We need to talk," she said, as if no suitcase had ever sat between us. "Can you come by?" I leaned against the counter, the tile cold under my bare feet, and said, "No, say it now." A pause, then her sigh, heavy with performance. "Your father's job is gone again. Layoffs. The bank's talking foreclosure. We're drowning." The words were meant to pull me back, but they only sharpened the edges of my resolve. "I'm not coming back," I said, voice steady as granite. "Never." Her tone tightened, a thread of guilt woven in. "You're our daughter." I laughed, sharp and brief. "You should have thought of that when you treated me like a bank account with a pulse." I hung up, and the silence that followed was cleaner than any I'd known in their house. But they didn't stop. Texts came next, please, then demands. Each number unfamiliar but reeking of their desperation. My sister's voicemail was the worst. Her voice soft with crocodile tears. "I miss you. We need you." I deleted it, my finger trembling, not with doubt but with the weight of finally refusing. Then an email arrived, formal and cold, from a lawyer claiming I owed $24,000 for unpaid room and board over 2 years. The audacity was almost artful. But it didn't scare me, it lit a fire. I called James, a lawyer friend whose wit matched his precision. He didn't flinch, drafting a response that same day. A blade of logic and evidence. He attached bank records, $200 in transfers, $800 each month, sent without fail to their account. He described the half closet I'd slept in, the bills I'd paid without a contract, and the eviction delivered on my birthday. His final line was a checkmate. "We are prepared to counterclaim for the full amount plus legal fees and emotional damages." 3 days later, their lawyer's reply was a single sentence, retreating like a scolded dog. "My clients will not proceed." I thought that was the end. But fate had one more card to play. Weeks later, I walked into my local bank to set up a savings plan. My folder of papers tucked under my arm. There they were, my mother and sister, seated at a loan officer's desk, dressed like they were auditioning for respectability. My mother's pearls gleamed under the fluorescent lights. My sister's blazer was crisp, too expensive for the story they were selling. I nearly turned away, but a spark of defiance rooted me to the spot. I stepped to the back of the line, close enough to hear my mother's polished plea. "We're just looking to refinance. There's no one else we can ask." The banker frowned. "No family support." My mother shook her head, voice low. "Just the two of us." I moved forward, placing my folder gently on the desk's edge. "Actually," I said, my tone calm as a still lake, "you had help. When $800 a month for 2 years. Bank of America. Account ending 2074. Transfers every first." The room stilled. My sister's face drained of color. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. The banker's eyes flicked between us. I laid down the documents, nodded, and walked out. The glass door swinging shut behind me. The late afternoon sun was warm, golden, like it knew I was free. A year after that bank encounter, I stood in a narrow townhouse at the edge of an older neighborhood, its creaky steps and crooked mailbox welcoming me like old friends. The keys in my hand felt heavier than their size, each one a testament to a life I'd carved from the wreckage. I'd signed the papers that morning, the deed bearing only my name. No co-signers, no strings. The driveway's weeds poked through cracked concrete, and the kitchen's linoleum was scuffed. But it was mine, a home where no one could push me out. I called Carol first, and she arrived with a thermos of coffee and lemon muffins, inspecting my cabinets with mock scrutiny. "Not fancy," she said, grinning. "But it's yours." I smiled, the words sinking deep. That's what matters. Work had become a steadier rhythm, not just survival, but growth. A new client, referred by James, led to side projects that padded my income, enough to buy a new couch, still secondhand, but chosen with care. I wasn't wealthy, but fear no longer stalked my days. I'd pack my lunch, a habit I kept not from need but from pride, each sandwich a reminder of my agency. The townhouse's silence was gentle, broken only by the hum of a kettle or the occasional creak of floorboards. I'd walk barefoot across the cool tiles, sip tea by the window, and feel the weight of my existence, no longer borrowed or bartered. Rumors reached me sometimes, carried by distant relatives who didn't know I'd severed the tie. The old house might be in foreclosure, they said. My sister's tuition payments were late. My mother was struggling. My father was distant. I listened without reaction, not from spite, but from a quiet disinterest, like hearing about a town I'd left behind. I didn't hate them. I simply no longer belonged to their story. Blood. I'd learned wasn't a contract I had to honor. The suitcase still sat in my closet. Not a wound, but a marker of the day I chose myself. I'd open the door sometimes, see its clean lines, and feel not anger, but clarity. I hadn't lost everything that day, only the illusion of their love. My life now was small but deliberate. I planted herbs in cracked pots by the kitchen window, their green tips catching the morning light. I hung a thrift store painting, a lopsided sailboat on a stormy sea above the fireplace, its imperfection a mirror of my own. Carol would visit, her laughter filling the rooms, and we'd talk about nothing and everything, her hard candies rattling in their tin. The townhouse wasn't a dream house, but it was a home, its walls holding only the echoes I invited. I'd sit on the porch some evenings, the air thick with summer's hum, and think about the family I'd left. Did they speak of me? Did they claim I'd drifted away? Or did they rewrite the story to erase their choice? I pictured my mother staring at unpaid bills, sighing into her teacup, saying, things were easier when we had help, never admitting what that help cost. My sister, I imagined, still filled rooms with her complaints, her wants spilling over like an untended fire. I didn't need their confession. I'd paid their mortgage, kept their lights on, carried their weight while they turned away. My proof wasn't in their words, but in the life I'd built the keys in my pocket, the emails I left unanswered, the home I owned outright. If anyone asked about the daughter who vanished, they'd have to decide lie or face the truth of who they'd pushed out. I wasn't gone. Not really. I'd simply stepped beyond their reach, into a world where my voice mattered, where my boundaries held. As I locked my door each night, the click was a promise, not a barrier. This was my life, and for the first time, it belonged only to me.